The idea was actually to talk about a topic that really, really inspires hatred in some people's hearts, and that's a specific someone I'm talking about is Triton. He really hates when I bring up this topic. That's the topic of like proto-civilizations and proto-advanced civilizations. And when I talk about that, I mean like civilizations that probably had some sort of like transport and high-tech equipment of some kind that predate our known history. I see Triton saying here, we're fucking right. A precursor. Yes, a precursor of some kinds, like a Promethean of some kind as well. I don't want to say precursor race because I'm probably like in the camp of they're not humanoid or probably not a human kind of species or a humanoid species of some kind. I don't know. I don't want to say it's probably octopi, but tell them about the stupid octopus people. Triton Bucky, thank you very much for bringing that up as I was going to say that. So no. Zane, like not like the Flintstones. Like the Flintstones, sure, maybe. But I'm thinking more like before the pyramids were built, talking about this super advanced civilization that had some kind of weaponry or some kind of tech that actually just wiped them out. And that's why there's no more fucking people or whatever the race they were, whatever species they were. There's no more of them. Octopus people, that was one of my theories. I think like having some sort of cephalopod kind of species of some kind is probably likely. So I was busy checking things up and I was looking at what they call the Silurian hypothesis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but the Silurian hypothesis is kind of, they say it's a thought experiment of some kind. Now, yeah, I'm the kind of guy that just pulls up a Wikipedia article and then starts to act like I'm some sort of expert on the topic, which I'm not. I read up a little bit about it, and although most sources say that it's probably not something that happened, there's a lot of theories about it and a lot of like theorizing about it. What could possibly have happened? Did they get wiped out because of their own technology? Did they get wiped out by environmental factors? And a lot of people are saying no, it's proto-civilization, like the pre-pyramid, pre-civilization. That's probably had some sort of advanced civilization or some sort of advanced tech that they had. But the problem is, whenever I mention it, Triton gets really mad and starts hating me. How did you come to this theory, says Triton. So I actually thought about it when I was still reading up about the pyramids. I was very interested in Egyptian mythology and all kinds of mythology, but Egyptian mythology specifically. While doing research in Egyptian, Sumerian, and Mesopotamian mythology, I was starting to read about the pyramids, and I realized that, okay, the pyramids were like super ancient by the time that the Egyptians were like around. They had ancient Egyptian studies in Egypt during the ancient Egyptian times already. So that's how old the pyramids were. I mean, there's this famous saying that Cleopatra is closer to the invention of iPhones. Her lifetime was closer to the invention of iPhones than the construction of the last pyramid. It's been a long fucking time that was passed between pyramids being built and the Egyptian like civilization as we know them in the history record right now. And I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of that info has, you know, been lost to time, been lost to like geographical events and environmental events and even physical events like wars and destruction and stuff like that. And of course, there's always going to be some sort of remnant of these different types of civilizations. But at the same time, I don't think we can measure everything. Like, we don't know if everything is there. Maybe there's some hidden info out in one of the islands that we haven't really done a lot of research on. You know, those uncontacted tribes might be staying on top of archaeological site that houses a lot of proto-civilization stuff, especially during the Pangea time. You never know. And that's why I thought like the hypothesis is really cool and I wanted to explore it and really think about it. Kyle says there were woolly mammoths at the same time as the pyramids. Exactly. You know, there's a lot of ancient creatures that were around during the time of the pyramids, but I'm thinking like before the pyramids. I'm thinking like way before the pyramids, like the same kind of time span, like what could have happened in like 1 million years, 2 million years. They say that the first the first micro-celled organisms started like 500-600 million years ago, according to studies. I'm thinking what happened in between those times. So I know there was a long time when micro-celled organisms were like kind of stagnant and there were like 3 or 4 different types and then they started branching out. I think maybe it like went explosive, especially like something like the Cambrian explosion, and vastly multiplied into different types of species. Yeah, that's my theory. I think Triton probably has left chat now. After me explaining it again. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So if you guys want to chat about it, let's talk. I don't know if anyone wants to debate the theory or say I'm just full of shit. Adorable Crafts, just to bring you up to speed, she's asking in the YouTube chat, why are people talking about octopus people? I'm proposing what they call the Silurian hypothesis. Based on this hypothesis, I'm theorizing that there was some sort of proto-advanced civilization that was like predating the Egyptian pyramids. I personally think that they might not have been humanoid. They might not have been like some sort of simian species. I think they were probably some sort of cephalopod cephalopod species of some kind, other words, octopus people, and that's where the octopus people thing came from. Triton says, don't debate. It's a fantasy theory. There can be no logical debate that can be had about it. I disagree. I think there's a lot of logical debate to be had about it. Now, a lot of people, and scientists included, mentioned that we would probably be able to identify, through geological records, some sort of ecological and entomological records, that there's some sort of proto-species or proto-civilization that happened, and that would be like tracked within the geological data. So yes, there's a lot of science to disprove this. I don't say there isn't. What I'm theorizing is that I think they haven't searched everywhere. Looking at places like under certain geographical sites, people are digging up ancient English people when they're doing like house renovations in England. There's a lot of things that were buried, they've been long buried, and we probably haven't had the tech or the means or methods to kind of figure this shit out. And find the data that we need. So I think we probably within our means right now don't have the tech or the technology to research and definitively disprove it. But I do think maybe in the future we could potentially look at exploring certain other avenues, and maybe through other technological means we can find out if it's true. I say that 100% for a fact we cannot definitively rule it out. Yes, it's just a theory, but then again, theory of evolution is just a theory. That's one thing. The other thing is, like, what I recently saw was people talking about like fossil fuels. They were talking about fossil fuels, and they were saying that we all are under the conception that oil and coal and fossil fuels that are carbon-based come from like old dinosaurs and plant material and biomass that's been compacted and compressed over many, many millions of years under the like pressures of the different earth crust and bullshit like that. Recently, I saw this a month or so ago. Actually, info came out that potentially this shit, the fossil fuels, might not be a biological byproduct as we originally thought. It could potentially have been due to like tectonic plate shifting and some sort of geological shifts happening that produce this, and it might not be as unrenewable as we think. I think there's still a lot of things we haven't really fucking figured out. Once again, that's just my theory, but I think that's possibly something. So let's check here. Triton says there is none. Everything in your head has not been proven, therefore you can say whatever you want, and it can't be incorrect because it is a fantasy theory. I will say, interesting. Do you have any proof to debunk or to debunk or disprove me? I'd love to hear from you. If you can show me something that we can maybe look at. I'm open to like seeing some research. I did some quick rough and dirty research just before we started. I'm checking on things like the Scientific America, Discovery Channel pages and everything like that. And of course, they're all like substantiating the claim that it's just a theory, it's not fact, but there are counter opposers. There's people who are for it and people who are against it. So you're just saying it's a fantasy theory? I say there are actual scientists researching it. Maybe it's not just a theory at the end of the day. You want to shag the octopus people. That's why, Kyle says. Maybe. Then Cephano Agnieszka says adorable crafts. That sounds like some Wololo talk. Kyle, but Mac, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. True, for something to be called a theory, it needs to have the weight of scientific consensus behind it. It's an hypothesis, but I think that because the research is still in its infancy, it could still be hypothesized, and therefore the theory can still evolve. Remember, it starts as like a hypothesis, but it can theoretically like shift, and more people can start doing more research into it, and it become a theory once more evidence has been gained. When some sort of scientific field just starts out, it's always just going to be like a bunch of buoy and hoo-haws. Then again, people might say, burn the witch, burn the heretic. Galileo didn't discover the sun fucking spinning around the earth. He discovered that the earth spins around the sun. So it could be a bunch of hoo-ha, but it might not be. You never know. I'm not saying I'm Galileo. I'm not being that egotistical. I'm also not that scientific about the whole situation. I'm just theorizing that maybe it might be true, or hypothesizing that it might be something that's true. Caden says 2 words: ancient aliens, or as he calls it, ancient aliens. The ancient aliens, I'll get into that. I think that's going to be the next thing I want to talk about. Adorable Craft says, Kyle, I believe you might be confusing the terms theory and scientific theory. True that, but that's, once again, that's just semantics, dude. Like, I could say it's hypothesis, I could say it's a theory, I could say it's scientific theory, I could say it's a belief, I can say it's a fucking fairy that rides on its little unicorn dick. I'm not saying it's fact. And if you think I'm saying it's fact, then you're probably misunderstanding me. I'm just saying I'm thinking that it's just a possibility. Maybe it's make-believe, maybe it's fantasy, maybe it's Maybelline. I don't fucking know. But I think I might be onto something. If I'm wrong, so be it. Carl says no, Mac is. When he speaks of the theory of evolution, that's a scientific theory, so he's putting himself in that room. Fair. I did make the argument, and I did reference the theory of evolution. I brought that on myself. Maybe that's once again me just being semantic about it, or misunderstanding. But fuck it. I'm gonna stick with what I said. Zane says best source for any topic. Trust me, bro. I was there. My uncle works at Nintendo, dude. He's gonna ban your fucking Pokemon account, bro. Trust me. Adorable Craft says, fair, but you don't need scientific consensus to just call something a theory. You need to call it a scientific theory. Once again, semantics, it comes down to semantics. But Kyle says, but not every wild bit of conjecture is the next Galileo. Occam's razor is more likely Occam. Never mind, I agree with Caden, he's right. Ancient aliens. Occam is my speciality. I fucking talk a lot of shit. There's only one answer, Caden says. Ancient aliens. And that's the other thing. Maybe the proto-civilization might have been removed, or that the evidence of their existence might have been removed by some sort of extraterrestrial or maybe subterranean proto-race or super species from outside this galaxy, or maybe from within. I'm a Bosch Anunnaki believer. I don't want to get into a hollow earth theory because I think that's a whole other can of worms, or a can of snails, as I like to call it. So it could be another can of snails if we're talking about the hollow earth theory on this topic. But I definitely think that if we're talking about like ancient proto, like superior civilizations or advanced civilizations, and once again, the definition of advanced could be many different things. So like advanced civilizations could be, they might have just had some form of transport, like a wheel, and maybe some sort of like proto bicycle, some shit. I'm not saying they had hoverboards. I'm not saying they were like nuclear or something like that. Maybe our definition of what's advanced for them is different. But at the same time, I'm thinking they at least had some sort of like healthcare or medicine. They definitely had some sort of infrastructure and technology that rivals what we think of when we think about pre-farming civilizations, some sort of pre-agriculture civilizations like the Sumerians or Mesopotamians, because those civilizations, they started with farming. Egyptians around the Nile, the Sumerians, Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, they all started out there. You know, they were the biggest civilizations for a very, very long time because they developed agriculture that could sustain large civilizations. And I think that evidence is easy to like lose, because a lot of it could be what we might consider a agricultural plant now, or an agricultural source of body fuel, like food or some shit, might not be what they considered food back then. Maybe they ate like small bullshitty plants that we don't really consider edible by today's standards. Maybe they're like tardigrades, or what's those other fucking, there's these snails that actually eat like metal or breathe metal. Maybe that's the kind of shit they could have been like consuming. Maybe they consumed matter that we don't consider food, and they shat out things that we don't consider biomass or excrement of some kind. Maybe they shat out like some sort of metal or polymer or some shit like that. Maybe we'll find some ancient civilization turds that look like something we use in construction today. Just a theory. Kincaid says, dealing with a civilization before our known history, you can definitely go down the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis rabbit hole. When I was searching up the topic, I did see something about them talking about Younger Dryas. So let's quickly give that a look. I'm just going to read the AI overview because I don't have time to read like a whole fucking article. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, YDIH, I'll start calling you guys YDIS, proposes that a comet or asteroid impact or a series of impacts around 12,900 years ago caused the Younger Dryas, YD, cold period, and may have contributed to the extinction of megafauna in the Western Hemisphere. Yes. I think that sounds pretty much like something I was thinking about as well. I think that's why people who focus on like the Bible definition of how old the Earth is, that's probably why they're thinking that in some sort of subconscious level, because Bible and recorded history started like 4,000, 5,000 years ago. Maybe it went further back, but it was destroyed, and then people had to like relearn how to read, write, shit like that, record history again. I think the Younger Dryas impact theory or hypothesis might have some interesting merit to it. I could be wrong, but it looks cool. I'll definitely look into it. Kincaid also mentioned when we were talking in person a couple of months ago to actually check out this documentary on Netflix about the old civilizations. Ancient Apocalypse. It was on Netflix. I'll put that shit into my browser right now so I never forget. I thought it's a quick doc. Now it's 2 fucking seasons. What the hell, bro? Anyways, that's the hypothesis. Up to you guys to decide whether you think Flintstones are real or not. Do you believe? I'll do another deep dive on it again soon. I will try and see if I can get a theory every time I stream to discuss and talk about. The idea of the stream is to actually talk about things I find interesting, to piss Triton off a little bit. Just a little bit. If I don't piss him off, then I think we can do our job correctly. Thank you very much, everyone, for hopping on this stream. I hope you guys had fun with me. I had some fun. Talked some cut. That's what I like. I'll let you all know when I'm streaming again. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.